Happy
So
to
this
help.
this is a repo I'd like you to fork off of GitHub. So when you get a chance, be sure to tap your fork to have your own repo. We're gonna go. This is gonna go by. This is a lot to cover in 2 hours, and we're probably not going to do it all. But I am hoping that if we get to a point where I'm going to keep track of time, that at least you guys can kind of say, oh, I'd rather go this route or I'd rather go this way. Let's focus on the watch. Let's focus on making our iOS app more robust. We'll kind of gauge it as we go along. But the goal is for at least the iPhone app, we're going to build an app where we have users' posts and comments. And we're also going to kind of go over the language and some of the intricacies of developing an app in Swift. So let me know when you've forked and cloned your own repo on your Mac, and then we'll continue to move forward.
I am forked and cloned.
Awesome.
Are we all good?
Yeah, I think we're good. Thank you.
Connection-wise, things worked out?
Yeah, thank you so much.
No worries.
So the first phase, we're going to kind of learn the intricacies of Xcode and create our first view in our first iPhone app. Next, we're going to understand some of the underlying type system in Swift. Then we'll talk about optionals and errors, which are big parts of Swift and how it works. We're going to decode some JSON data so that we can actually use it in our app. And then we're going to talk about delegation and the model view controller patterns that Apple likes us to use. And then the phase 3, we'll talk about asynchronous functions. So passing on a callback, essentially dealing with threads, updating the UI, and then navigating and presenting different view controllers. And lastly, we will take that user interface and develop a much more simplified version on the Apple Watch. So if you went ahead and cloned, you should have a directory with a Xcode project, which you can open up. It should look something like this. And you should have your Xcode project right here, which you can open up in Xcode. So let me know when you've done that. And if you run this app, let's see what happens. Probably not going to get much of anything. Actually, it might even be a black screen. Let's take a look.
It's got a large screen. Splash screen.
I think that's it. Wow. Okay, $10.99 on the App Store. Buy it today. So you can see, it's rebooting. That's what it is. But it will be blank. And the reason being we haven't set up any sort of storyboard to launch to, or we haven't set up any view controllers. Let's just take a look at kind of the way Xcode works. So we have our project here, and we have, I'm going to do this before I forget, because I know I can see it, but you guys probably can't see it. Much better. Unfortunately, it doesn't change this stuff, but point being, we have a project. Really, we don't have to do a lot here. If we wanted to, we could have gone in and used a storyboard right here, our main interface, but we're actually not going to be using a storyboard for this app. So what we end up getting is a blank screen when we launch the app. The launch point of your application is going to be in the app delegate. So typically in C or C++ or a lot of your applications, you'll have like a main function. The way it works in iOS, you can kind of do a main function, but the default way is by, as Dave said, we have a launch screen, but we don't have anything behind it. There we go, beautiful. Going back to the app delegate, your main launch point is going to be here at this app delegate application did finish launching with options, and it has the UI application, which is kind of an abstract class of the application itself, and a bunch of launch options that you can give to the application. Really, we're not going to be dealing with that, but this is where we're going to be setting up our view that we will display in the application. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's just set up, for instance, a really simple view controller. So here's some code. So just to kind of explain this, we're creating a variable called view controller. We're instantiating it from the UI view controller class. And then, for instance, if we want to go ahead and make that visible, we also need to create a window. Window takes in a frame, which is essentially the dimensions of our window. Now, this is not a desktop app. This is an iPhone app. So it really, there's a window, but it's technically a window taking up the whole entire screen. So in other words, we need the dimensions of our device screen. So I'm going to put that right there for now. Let's go ahead instead and get the dimensions of the screen. We can do that by calling UI screen, grabbing the main screen, and then grabbing the frame. Actually, we're going to want the bounds of that. And that is the frame that will be used for deciding on the size of our window. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and use that here as well, so we can give dimensions to our view controller. Okay, never mind. And then we need to make that save the window, because UI window is a class, and if any of you are familiar with classes, they're really behind the scenes. There's a pointer involved. We need to keep reference to that pointer. So we're actually going to set the window property on self. And then next, we're going to do window make key invisible. And then we need to tell the window what our root view controller is. In other words, what is the view that we're going to show on the screen? And we have that. Let's see what happens now. So the way to run an application is the play button at the top left. You can also do it, the shortcut I use is Command R on your Mac. That's a shortcut to run the application. So we have blank, because we really haven't set up our view controller very well. What we actually want is we would like to have, if we go back to the web page, I'm going to do, whoops, not that. We actually want to set up these tabs at the bottom. And so to do that, we need what's called a UI tab bar controller. Feel free to go and look at the documentation I have set up here for a lot of these classes. It might find helpful. And if you feel like you want to go ahead of what I'm doing, feel free to do that. And if you have questions, please feel free to raise your hand.
Just another second with the code would be helpful for me.
This code?
Yes.
Okay.
Just catching up stuff.
Yep. So what we're going to want to do is actually create a UI tab bar controller, and then UI tab bar controller takes as a series of view controllers for each tab that we're going to want to have. So we are going to go ahead and create those the tab bar controller, and then we're going to also create a view. We need to create a custom view controller as well. So I'm going to give you. Let me know when folks are ready.
Just hit Command R for the first time. So
Awesome.
and it succeeded. All right.
It's booting the phone. Awesome.
Yep. Wait, is that good?
That's good. It's just it's turning on.
Okay.
All right. So let's first create our custom class, because we're going to need something for our users. We're going to just set up users for now. So what we want in the end is just something like this for our first step, where we have a list of an empty list, in other words, of the users. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to go in here and we're going to create a custom class. So go to the top right, click the PioPart app folder, and then you will see new. Go ahead and tap new.
Just a new file.
Yep. And you'll see a series of templates here. We're going to use the Cocoa Touch class, because we're going to create our own custom table view controller for our users. I'm going to call this users table view controller, and we're going to want it to be a subclass of UI table view controller. Let me know if this does not make sense.
I'm slowly catching up.
No
All
problem.
right.
Make sure
Why
you,
did we use a Cocoa?
because so essentially what what that does is it gives us a template to follow for implementing the actual table.
Okay.
So we're going to use a CocoaTouch class template. And then the way it works is we are subclassing off of table view controller, the UI table view controller, because that encapsulates a lot of the functionality we're going to use when we list out the users.
Yeah, what's CocoaTouch?
What is 100 years ago, before the dinosaurs. So CocoaTouch is the UI, the user interface functionality of the iPhone, like the frameworks and components and stuff like that.
Similarly, we had different other things.
Yep.
You could have without having the table functionality, you can have something that we could develop from the scratch.
If you like to torture yourself, yeah, you can develop it from scratch. Yeah. But I mean, in a lot of ways, you can get away with a lot with what Apple provides, and then customize further from there. That's probably a better perspective.
Is Cocoa being Cocoa's kind of on its way out though, right? It's being replaced or no?
No,
No. Okay.
no, it's being built on top of.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah, I was kind of going to ask how, this might be outside the scope of this, but how is like Swift UI coming in going to affect this kind of process?
So I think, yeah, I'm not clear about how Swift UI plays around with CocoaTouch. Do you know? Is it replacing it? Or is it built on top of?
I would suspect it's built on top of.
Yeah. I would suspect that, but it could totally be something built on top of like Metal, which is like their way of doing graphic stuff directly on the processor. I don't know the answer to that.
Just curious.
Swift UI, really the benefit is more for development purposes, I think, than anything else.
And targets is just default.
Yeah, you're going to target the iOS app. And I can I'm trying to keep an eye on time. I want to explain targets just briefly. So yeah, go ahead, create the, go ahead and create the file, and you should see this.
Yeah.
So targets are essentially like, you can have a project with multiple targets. Like I want to build 2 iPhone apps, a watch app, a TV app, a Mac app, a framework. Like a target is essentially like a package that you're going to distribute or either use within another target, if that makes sense. Okay. So we have this. We have our table view controller, our empty with no functionality table view controller. Great. Now we're going to need to, first we need to create the tab bar controller. We need to create a navigation controller for that. A navigation controller is probably what you've seen 1,000 times in an iPhone app. When you tap an item on the phone, it takes you to a child. We want that kind of functionality in this app, so if you tap on a user, you can get their list of posts.
You can keep it. Maybe your arms are getting tired.
My arms are getting tired. I may come back, but
Fair enough. All right.
So let's go ahead. We're going to work our way backwards. So first, we're going to take that user table view controller and encapsulate it in a navigation controller. So let's create the navigation controller first. So let navigation controller. Actually, I'm going to call it, just so we know what it's for, user navigation controller. And then we're going to do UI navigation controller. And let me know if I'm going too fast with this.
Probably the answer is yes, but I'm just barely able to keep up.
Use autocomplete. That is your friend. That will make it go a lot faster.
If only I had Vim bindings.
So we're going to use the 4th constructor here, the one that takes in a root view controller. If you see that there. We need to create our user controller. So go up a line, and I'm sorry about that. And we're going to create the user table view controller. And for that, you should just be able to do that. Let me know when you are ready for me to go further. So we create the table view controller we're going to display. We're going to then take that table view controller and encapsulate that in the navigation controller there.
Okay. I am caught up. Thank you.
Cool. So then, what are we going to put here? Who can answer that question?
You can.
What's the root of our navigation controller for users? It will be the user's table view controller. The variable, not the class. Does that make sense?
I am basically a monkey typing code right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, edit this so see it much more clearly. So in order to have that child navigation structure, we need to make sure that user's table view controller is within a navigation controller, so that way we can go backwards and forwards within that tree structure. Now, next thing we're going to do is create a tab bar controller. That is this right here, because we want tabs at the bottom. Then after that, we're going to create our window. With the size of our screen. We need to set our root view controller on the window, which you are ready to answer that. I will know we're ready to move forward. Say it again?
Is it user navigation control?
No, no. What's going to be the main view that everything will be encapsulated in?
The root view.
And which root view will that be? Let's look at the picture again. What do you see as the main encapsulation here?
Is the table view?
So it's the tab bar.
Oh,
So the tab bar is what we see here at the bottom, and then within the tab bar are 3 children, which each are navigation view controllers. That's what we're going to end up doing. So just to kind of illustrate that, it did that thing again. It does not like. There we go. So we have our tab bar controller at the top. That's our root view. And then each will have a series of navigation controllers. And then each navigation controller will be connected to a specific table view controller. So that's how our structure is set up. So at the very top here, at the top is what our root view will be, which is our tab bar controller. So if we go back here, we're going to set the root of the window to our tab bar controller. Because that is what we want. And then within the tab bar is our navigation controller, which we need to set that up here. And you'll see a thing called set view controllers. And this is where we're going to use the user navigation controller as one of the tabs at the bottom.
So I think I missed something. Where did the whole like let frame, let view controller,
Great.
and all that go?
So I got rid of it.
Aha. Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to simplify it.
Got it. Okay, that makes it feel.
You could do that. You could do that if you want to still. But
No, I'm good. I just.
okay.
Yeah.
While we're finishing this up, so in Swift we have 2 ways of defining a variable. We can define it with a let or with a var. Let means that the value cannot change. Var means you are allowed to change the value. So depending on if it's immutable or not, you want as much of your code to be immutable as possible, but when it's necessary, use var. So that's why everything here is let. Now you can see you have iPhone. Cool.
Yeah.
But we have one thing missing, if you
What?
notice at the bottom. What's missing?
the tab.
Yeah. So we need to define the tab item for the view controller. So let's go ahead and we'll just do that really easily. So if you go to, we'll do it here actually. We'll do it in our view did load for now. But if you do self.tab item, we can then just set, come on. It's not playing nice. Or should I think? Come on.
Not giving me any help either.
Yeah, I know. This is it. There we go. Oh, wait, did I name it the wrong thing? Yeah, tab bar item, excuse me.
Aha.
That's why it was not playing nice. There is a title. Here we go. Users. So this way now, when it's used in a tab bar, actually, excuse me, that's incorrect. Sorry about that.
Read delete everything? All right, got it.
I'm so sorry about that.
All good.
Right here. And the reason we have to put it here is because that is the connection between the table and the tab bar is the navigation controller. That's why we need to set it here on the actual table view controller.
Okay, I'm getting used to this autocomplete. I'm just saying. It's pretty nice.
The way I'm getting the image names is from the asset library here, the asset catalog here. So you see we have our icon for our app, and you have to have 50 different versions for that, unfortunately. And then we have
Does it auto-generate that for you?
No.
No.
I have an app that does that, but
Yeah.
no, it doesn't. It doesn't do it automatically. So I have a app or a image for the comment, an image for the logo that's used on that launch screen. We have an image for post and an image for users, and these are the ones that we're using on the actual tab bar. Did you run that? Ta-da!
Ta-da!
All right, so step one is completed. We have our tab bar, we have our navigation controller, so that way we can move on forward, and we have an empty table of users. Our next step is going to be actually loading that table with actual users.